guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoilery gripe video for The Knife and Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. As I said, this video will have spoilers in it, so if you have not read this book, go ahead and check out my spoiler-free review, which will be linked on the screen. So I know this book is a huge favorite of a lot of people, but I found myself struggling with it, and actually the more that I sit with it, I thought that I was going to maybe enjoy it more, maybe see some things that I didn't see when I was reading it, but now I'm actually just getting a little more bitter about it as I sit with it and how much I just really didn't like this story, which is unfortunate because I've had this book on my shelf for over a year. I thought I was really going to enjoy it. I've heard really great things, but it is one of those hit or miss books. It seems like people either love this series or absolutely despise this series, and so that is why I'm not pushing myself through any more of these books. I don't want to start hating the series completely. This book wasn't for me. I understand why other people like it. I personally didn't. But there are things about this book that I just didn't enjoy. The biggest thing, I think, was the trope of miscommunication within this book. The miscommunication plotline in books is something that I hate so much. It has to be really well done, and very few books do it well. And this one I found just overdid it. At the beginning, I understand why no one was telling Todd things, because his noise was susceptible to other people listening. You know, he couldn't learn anything in Prentisstown because obviously everybody would have heard him and he couldn't have gotten away. I understand why Ben and Killian left things from him at the beginning. But when you get into the new settlements and people aren't telling him things and are just kind of looking at him like, oh, why don't you know this stuff? Really? Really? It just felt like a device to keep things from the readers, and I didn't enjoy that. I understand that you needed to keep things suspenseful and things, you know, you didn't have to learn things until later. It's still a sloppy way to do things, I think. So the fact that he got to the first settlement and they had discovered that he didn't know that there were other settlements, he didn't know that there were women, he didn't know anything about his town's history, he doesn't know that people are supposed to be kept out of the settlements if they're from Prentisstown, he didn't know anything like that. Like, and everyone was like, oh, we'll tell you later. No, it's just like Game of Thrones, where whenever someone goes in Game of Thrones and is gonna tell Jon Snow something, they're like, oh, I'll tell you later when I get back or something. They frickin' die, or they get separated for a long time. And that's exactly how it happened in here. Obviously, everybody that's gonna tell him something ends up dying, and you're just like, just tell him now. Why do you have to wait? Oh, we're gonna let you rest. We're gonna give you food. Like, no. Tell him things that are important, like, that he's going to need to know, like, oh, this is why you guys are locked out of all the civilization and all the other settlements. This is why you guys can't go in here, blah, blah, blah. Like, I understand that he had to kind of open his mind up a little bit and that he wasn't really willing to hear things from other people at the beginning, but those other people didn't know that about him, so can you just, like, tell him things? Because he made a lot of dumbass decisions because people didn't tell him things. Except for the fact that he made a really big, dumb decision when he knows at the beginning, after he got to the first settlement and the first settlement gets run over by the army, that he should have told them that the map said, like, warn them, blah, blah, blah. So why do you then keep the book and the map and everything to yourself? You don't let her read it, you don't let anybody else read it, you're like, no, I made this huge mistake that I'm really guilty about, but I'm not going to let anybody else read this book that I can't read. Why? Because then again, he could have learned stuff earlier if he just would have let other people read the book to him. Like, why? Why do you make dumb decisions? I also understand that the whole point of this book is that Todd is not a killer, he's not like the other men in Prentisstown, and that he can't take a life and stuff like that because that would kind of make everybody win. Like, I understand that at the end is that's what you learn. But the fact that we have three pretty kind of like super powered villains, even though they don't have any abilities, you know, you have like Junior Mayor, you have the Mayor, and you have Aaron, and they're all, especially Aaron, unstoppable. They keep coming back over and over and over again, no matter what happens. You know, Aaron's face basically gets ripped off like 3 times, and yet he still comes back. What kind of superhuman abilities do you have? Because that's not realistic whatsoever. From the first point, like, he gets attacked by crocs the first time, and like, how do you come back from that? Like, you don't. And then he keeps coming back and keeps coming back. He gets his nose ripped off by the dog. Like, how do you? No, you would have been dead. But anyway, aside from that, every time that Todd is faced with somebody, he doesn't like cripple them. Like, I understand he doesn't want to kill them, but he doesn't cripple them or like tie them up or do something, you know, because they keep coming back after you. So maybe you guys should do something. Like, I understand you're not going to kill him or kill them, but do something a little more than just like, oh, I'm just not going to kill you, I'm going to run away. Like, no, they're going to come after you. They're going to keep coming after you. So I need you to do something and use your brain a little bit more to do something. Like, obviously, she's very resourceful, so why don't you guys work together to... No? No? Okay, so he'll be back in like 4 chapters. That's great. So I really hate mustache twirling villains, and that's what I feel like Aaron especially was. The fact that he kept coming back over and over again, and the fact that he was sacrificing himself to make sure Todd was the killer. Like, why? What was your motivation for that? I understand that he's like a religious kind of zealot character, but at the same time, like, you have to give me more than that for his motivations. And even the mayor, like, why do you want to take over the whole world? Like, why? There's some weird, like, misogynistic thing about, like, killing all the women. Like, what's your... Give me something more to work with as to why these people are doing these horrible things. Like, why are all of the men forced to kill people? I understand it's like, oh, okay, we're gonna make them kill everybody whenever they come of age so that they'll, you know, be complacent with everything, blah, blah, blah. But it still, I feel like, would take a lot to convince a child to kill someone. Like, every single child is just fine with this. Like, they just do this, and they don't learn anything about it before. Like, it's not like they get, like, prepped for it, you know? Like, you just, oh, you're gonna go in this room and you have to torture and kill this person? That makes sense? It doesn't make sense to me. This doesn't make sense. A lot of this book doesn't make sense to me. The one good thing about this book is I did really enjoy the writing. I thought that the writing was well done. I didn't like it for the setting and the characters and the plot that it had. I would have liked to see the writing and other things, so I'm going to read other books by Patrick Ness because I do enjoy his writing. But I also can't forgive the fact that Patrick Ness killed Manchee in the most heartbreaking way that you could ever kill an animal character. Like, you kill the character that I actually like after, of course, Todd forms a bond with him. Like, I knew going into this book, I had a feeling going into this book, I was 90% sure going into this book that the dog was going to die. I've heard all these things about this book, and there's this tragic death that nobody forgives, da-da-da. I'm like, okay, the dog's dead. Because everybody reacts really viscerally to animal death in books, movies, TV shows, whatever. So I knew it was happening. And I knew as soon as they were starting to get like a bond, I was like, oh, it's gonna happen eventually. It's gonna happen. It's coming. I know it's coming. Every time that something happened to the dog, I was like, it's gonna happen pretty quick here. And then it happened. And even though I thought I was prepared, I was not prepared. How are you going to rip out my heart like that? The fact that he's like, Todd, and he's like, Todd, like, where are you going? Like, as he's dying, I just can't. It makes me so emotional. I was bawling on my couch reading this. And like I said, I'm not attached to any other characters. I didn't care what happened, da-da-da-da-da. But that was so heartbreaking because I could, like, see my animals doing the same thing because they're just... I could go on a whole, like, tangent about how much I just love animals and little furry things. So that was heartbreaking, and I don't really forgive Patrick Ness for doing that. Like, I want to set this book down in front of him and be like, first off, but how dare you, okay? How dare you? So I got through all the survival story and the heartbreak part and everything else, and I was ready for him to get to Haven and kind of like, okay, we're good, we're there, we're gonna try to fight the army, whatever, and the next books, that's fine, I'm just gonna let it go at that. But then they get to Haven, and we discover that the army got there ahead of them. And I'm just like, it was a predictable storyline that I was hoping wasn't going to happen, because I was like, okay, a lot of things that are predictable have happened this entire time. But they're going to get there and, like, maybe kind of, like, fight back or something, right? Like, no. 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 And that's supposed to be a cliffhanger to get you to read, like, the next book and be really excited, and I just know. I was kind of maybe thinking I might continue with the series at that point, but then we got to the ending and I'm just like, don't do that to me. Don't taunt me with your cheap tricks, okay? I don't want to know. I don't want anything to do with it. I've read the second synopsis for the second book, and that is one of the most stereotypical dystopian second book plots I have ever read in my life. So I'm not going to continue with this series. Nope, I do not want to do that to myself. I personally didn't enjoy this. I understand what other people do. If this is your favorite series, I'm very sorry. But I personally didn't like it. I wish it would have leaned more science fiction than dystopian. I wish I would have liked the characters more. I wish the dog wasn't dead. I have a lot of things that I wish, and none of those things happened. So comment down below and let me know what you thought of The Knife of Never Letting Go. Thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys soon. Bye!